It was just after midnight when Monica Carter tiptoed through the quiet halls of the grand house she had once believed would save her and her daughter. The air was thick, heavy with a silence that felt unnatural, almost suffocating. As she passed Alyssa's bedroom door, a faint whisper caught her ear, desperate, pleading, terrified. She froze. Inside, Alyssa sobbed quietly, her words broken and fearful, like secrets not meant to be heard. Monica's heart pounded in her chest. For months, she had convinced herself that the man who welcomed them into his home, the man the entire community revered as Reverend Daniel Brooks, was their blessing, their miracle. But something in Alyssa's voice told her that they had stepped into a nightmare instead. The security cameras Charles had installed for protection had caught movement downstairs earlier that night. Strange shadows, moments that didn't fit the story he always told. Monica had dismissed them at first. Now, with the walls practically breathing around her, she realized the danger wasn't outside. It was inside these walls, living among them. A door creaked softly somewhere in the house. Monica held her breath, her instincts screaming. What she would uncover would shatter everything, and she would never look at Faith the same way again. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss stories that reveal what others are afraid to show. Join a community that seeks truth, stands for justice, and uncovers the hidden. Stay informed, stay empowered. Your voice matters here. Monica Carter had always been a fighter. Life had forced her into that role early on, raising her daughter Alyssa alone in a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. Monica worked two jobs, one as a receptionist at a local law firm, the other cleaning offices late into the night, just to keep the lights on and food on the table. Despite her exhaustion, she made it a point to be present for Alyssa, to attend every school event, every parent-teacher meeting, every small milestone. She was the kind of woman who wore resilience like armor. Her laugh, when it came, was full and genuine, but her eyes always carried a flicker of weariness, an invisible scar left by years of disappointment and betrayal. Monica had loved once, deeply. Alyssa's biological father had promised the world, only to vanish before her daughter's first birthday. Since then, trust had been a luxury she couldn't afford. Alyssa was Monica's world. A quiet, thoughtful girl, Alyssa loved to draw, often losing herself for hours, sketching elaborate scenes of forests and oceans she dreamed of visiting someday. At 16, she was shy, introspective, and wise beyond her years, a consequence of growing up with a mother who had no time for childish naivety. Yet despite their struggles, the bond between Monica and Alyssa was unbreakable, built on years of sacrifice, whispered late-night conversations, and mutual dreams of something better. Church had always been Monica's refuge, a place where she could lay down her burdens, even if only for an hour on Sundays. It wasn't just faith. It was the sense of belonging, the community that wrapped around her when life grew too heavy. When Reverend Daniel Brooks extended his hand to Monica after a particularly emotional service, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: hope. Daniel was charismatic, respected, and seemed genuinely invested in helping struggling families like hers. He spoke with the conviction of a man who had seen darkness and found his way out. Slowly, carefully, he worked his way into Monica's life, offering advice, support, even financial help when things got tight. For a woman who had spent so long carrying her burdens alone, his kindness felt like rain on parched earth. When Daniel invited Monica and Alyssa to move into his home, a sprawling, beautiful property just outside the city, Monica wrestled with her doubts. But the promise of safety, of security, of a real family, was too tempting to resist. She told herself that God was finally answering her prayers. After all, wasn't this what she had always wanted for Alyssa? A stable home, a strong role model, a chance to breathe. Monica packed their lives into cardboard boxes with trembling hands, telling herself this was the beginning of a new chapter. She couldn't have known then that the man she trusted with her daughter's future was about to destroy everything she had fought so hard to protect. For the first time in years, Monica Carter allowed herself to dream. Moving into Reverend Daniel Brooks's sprawling home felt like stepping into a life she had only seen from the outside. A life where dinners were eaten at a table without the buzzing worry of unpaid bills hanging over her head. Where Alyssa could do her homework in a spacious, sunlit room instead of a cramped corner by the kitchen. Daniel made it all seem so easy, so natural. He encouraged Monica to leave behind the burden of working 2 jobs, offering her a position within his growing charitable foundation. There, she could use her organizational skills to help underprivileged youth, work that gave her a sense of purpose, far beyond anything she had known behind a receptionist's desk. Monica was thrilled. She would finally be part of something that mattered. The idea of building a future filled with meaning, security, and dignity stirred a part of Monica she thought had died long ago. She imagined Alyssa going to college, walking across a stage to receive her diploma while Monica cheered in the audience. She pictured lazy Sunday mornings filled with laughter instead of fatigue, holidays where presents didn't have to be carefully rationed, and summers spent traveling instead of scraping together school supply lists. Most of all, Monica dreamed of giving Alyssa a father figure, someone who would stand by her side and model strength, kindness, and faith. Daniel fit that image perfectly, or at least that's what Monica desperately wanted to believe. He spoke with authority but never arrogance, offering advice to Alyssa about school, about the future, about choosing the right friends. He offered Monica quiet reassurances when her worries threatened to bubble over, calming her with simple, comforting words. Trust in God's plan. The house itself seemed to breathe promise. With its polished hardwood floors, grand staircase, and walls adorned with tasteful art, it felt like a sanctuary from the struggle that had defined Monica's existence for so long. Alyssa's new room was bigger than their entire old apartment, with a view of the woods beyond the backyard. Monica often stood at the doorway, watching her daughter settle into the new space, telling herself that this was what success looked like. And yet, beneath the surface, subtle cracks began to form. Alyssa, usually so open with her mother, grew quieter. She spent more time alone, withdrawing from the vibrant, creative girl Monica had always known. Monica chalked it up to the move, to adolescence, to the overwhelming change. Daniel was quick to soothe her concerns, suggesting that Alyssa just needed time to adjust. And Monica, so desperate to hold on to this fragile new life, chose to believe him. Work at the foundation consumed much of Monica's energy. Daniel praised her dedication, often calling her his right hand during board meetings and fundraising events. Every compliment, every word of validation filled a deep well of insecurity inside her. She had worked so hard for so long with so little recognition. Now she was finally being seen, respected. It felt intoxicating. She told herself that this was the life God had always intended for her. The years of hardship were simply preparation for this blessing. Daniel's generosity, the community's acceptance, the security of the house, it all seemed like confirmation that her prayers had been answered. But Alyssa's growing silence gnawed at the back of Monica's mind. She pushed it away, convincing herself that teenagers were naturally moody, that Alyssa would come around once she found new friends and adapted to the new school year. Monica was too busy organizing gala events and writing grant proposals to sit down and ask the hard questions. She clung fiercely to the vision of the future she had built in her mind, unwilling to let doubts creep in. Doubts meant instability. Doubts meant failure. Monica had risked everything to believe in this new beginning. She couldn't afford to let fear steal it away. When Daniel suggested that they formalize their relationship, not marriage, he said, not yet, but a commitment, a family bond, Monica felt the final piece click into place. She agreed without hesitation, blinded by gratitude, ambition, and longing. She believed that she was not just saving herself, but securing a bright, stable future for Alyssa too. In Monica's heart, The battle between hope and instinct was already raging, but for now, hope was winning. And that hope would soon lead her deeper into the darkness than she ever could have imagined. At first, Monica Carter convinced herself that Alyssa's withdrawal was temporary. Change was hard for teenagers, she reasoned. Moving into a new house, adjusting to new routines, new people, it would take time. Monica told herself that Alyssa would settle in eventually, that her daughter's silence was just growing pains. But as the weeks dragged on, the signs became harder to dismiss. Alyssa, once so full of quiet creativity, now seemed hollowed out, like a ghost haunting the grand, echoing hallways of Reverend Daniel Brooks's house. She spent most of her time behind her locked bedroom door, barely speaking during meals, her appetite dwindling. Her laughter, once rare but precious, disappeared altogether. Monica tried to ignore the gnawing worry in her gut. She buried herself in her work at the foundation, taking pride in the success of charity events and community outreach programs. Every time she felt a stab of guilt for not spending more time with Alyssa, Daniel would soothe her concerns. "You're doing God's work, Monica," he would say with a reassuring smile. "Alyssa is just adjusting. Give her space." And Monica, desperate to believe in the life she had fought so hard to build, listened, but the cracks grew wider. Alyssa began waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Monica would rush to her room, only to find her daughter trembling, unable or unwilling to explain the nightmares that left her soaked in sweat and sobbing. During one particularly disturbing episode, Monica found Alyssa curled into a ball at the foot of her bed, rocking back and forth, whispering, I'm sorry," over and over again. The sight chilled Monica to her core. Still, Daniel remained calm, unwavering. "Teenage girls can be dramatic," he said one evening as they sat in the kitchen sipping tea. "Hormones, stress, all of it can make them unstable. You just have to trust that she'll find her footing again." Monica nodded, though the words rang hollow in her ears. Something was wrong, deeply, terribly wrong, but every time she tried to reach for the truth, fear pulled her back. Then, small, chilling incidents began to occur. Monica noticed Alyssa flinching whenever Daniel entered the room. She saw the way her daughter tensed up, her shoulders rigid, her eyes darting away from his gaze. She heard the hurried way Alyssa would retreat to her room the moment Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. She found Alyssa's journal once, tucked deep beneath her mattress. Inside, the pages were covered not with words, but with frantic sketches. Dark, distorted images of trapped birds, broken wings, and heavy, locked doors. Monica's heart twisted painfully. When she confronted Alyssa about it, the girl simply shrugged and mumbled, "Just dreams, Mom. Nothing important." The lies tasted bitter on Monica's tongue, but she forced herself to swallow them. She had to believe. She had to believe that this life, the stability, the respect, the promise of safety, was not built on a rotten foundation. But doubt gnawed at her, a relentless presence she could no longer ignore. The final blow came one grey afternoon. Monica had returned home early from a foundation meeting, exhausted and eager to catch up on time with Alyssa. As she stepped into the house, she heard low voices upstairs, Daniel's deep, commanding tone, and Alyssa's soft, trembling replies. Curiosity and an uneasy instinct she couldn't explain pulled her up the stairs quietly. She stopped outside Alyssa's door, heart pounding, straining to hear. "You mustn't tell anyone," Daniel's voice said, sharp and urgent. "This is between us. Understand?" Monica's blood ran cold. Alyssa murmured something inaudible, and Daniel's voice hardened. "If you speak about this, everything your mother has will disappear. She'll lose everything. Is that what you want?" Silence followed, thick, oppressive silence. Monica staggered back, her world tilting on its axis. She had spent months trusting Daniel, believing in him, depending on him. Now all that trust shattered into jagged pieces that tore through her heart. Her instincts screamed at her to burst into the room, to grab Alyssa and run, but fear paralyzed her. Fear of Daniel's power, his influence, his control, fear that he would destroy them if she moved too soon. So Monica retreated, trembling, hiding her horror behind a mask of calm. She needed a plan, she needed proof, and most importantly, she needed to keep Alyssa safe. As she stood there, breathless and broken, Monica realized that the real danger had never been the world outside their front door. The monster was already inside, smiling at them from across the dinner table, wrapping their lives in a noose disguised as salvation. And soon, that noose would tighten. The clinic smelled sterile, like disinfectant and cold fear. Monica sat stiffly in the corner of the brightly lit examination room, her hands clenched tightly in her lap as Alyssa sat on the table, staring at nothing. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard clutched to her chest, had finished her preliminary examination and now returned with a grim expression. "Mrs. Carter?" she said gently, glancing toward Alyssa before shifting her focus back to Monica. "I have some news." Monica's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She braced herself for words she couldn't predict, but instinctively knew would change everything. "Alyssa is pregnant," the doctor said, her voice steady but not unkind. For a moment, Monica couldn't comprehend the words. Pregnant. Her mind rejected the information as impossible. Alyssa was 16. She was quiet, careful, still just a girl in so many ways. Pregnant didn't fit into the life Monica had so desperately tried to construct for her. The room spun slightly, and Monica gripped the edges of her chair to stay grounded. She turned to Alyssa, whose face remained blank, her eyes hollow, her hands gripping the hem of her sweatshirt so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "How far along?" Monica choked out. "Approximately 12 weeks," the doctor replied. 12 weeks. 3 months. Monica's mind raced, trying to piece together timelines, memories, signs she had missed. How could she have missed something so enormous? How could she have been so blind? She rose from her chair and crossed to Alyssa, dropping to her knees beside the exam table. "Sweetheart," she whispered, voice trembling, who is the father?" Alyssa's entire body stiffened, her lips pressed into a thin line, and she shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Monica felt her stomach drop. The terror radiating off her daughter was palpable, heavier than anything Monica had ever felt before. This wasn't about a teenage mistake, a secret boyfriend, a lapse in judgment. This was something else, something far worse. Before Monica could press further, the door swung open and Daniel Brooks entered the room. He moved with practiced calm, his polished shoes silent against the linoleum. His eyes swept the room quickly, assessing the emotional temperature like a seasoned manipulator. "What's going on?" he asked smoothly, as if he didn't already know. Monica turned to him, her voice cracking under the weight of panic and disbelief. "Alyssa is pregnant," she said. "She won't tell me who the father is." Daniel's face didn't betray a flicker of emotion. He simply walked over to Alyssa, placing a hand gently, but possessively, on her shoulder. "We have to stay calm," he said, voice low and soothing. "This is difficult, but God has a plan for all of us." The words struck Monica like a slap. God has a plan? Her daughter was terrified, broken, and Daniel was talking about divine purpose? A cold realization began to creep into Monica's consciousness, but she shoved it down violently. She couldn't afford to think it, not yet. Daniel continued to speak, guiding Alyssa with gentle, coaxing words. "Everything will be okay, sweetheart. We'll get through this. Your mother and I, we'll take care of everything." Monica watched, frozen, as Daniel's hand lingered a fraction too long on Alyssa's shoulder, his thumb brushing an emotion that was far too intimate for comfort. Something inside Monica snapped. She grabbed Alyssa's hand, pulling her gently but firmly toward her. "We're going home," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. Daniel stepped in front of them, blocking their path with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Monica, please," he said. "You're upset. Let's pray together. Let's find strength in our faith." Monica recoiled. The man she had trusted, the man she had practically worshipped, was now a wall between her and her daughter. Every instinct in her screamed that they had to leave, immediately. Without another word, she pushed past him, shielding Alyssa with her own body as she maneuvered them out of the room, down the hallway, and out into the cool evening air. Only when they were in the car, doors locked, did Monica allow herself to breathe. Alyssa curled into herself in the passenger seat, sobbing silently, her small body racked with tremors. Monica gripped the steering wheel, staring blankly ahead. The truth loomed in front of her, undeniable now. Whatever had happened to Alyssa, whatever had been done to her, it had happened under Daniel's roof. And more than that, Monica's gut twisted with horror. It was Daniel. Her mind raced back over every moment. The strict house rules, Alyssa's retreat into silence, the forced smiles, the note she had found. It all fit now, sickeningly. She had brought the wolf straight into the sheepfold. She had handed her daughter over to a monster wrapped in the skin of a savior. The humiliation crashed down on Monica in crushing waves. She had failed to protect Alyssa. She had failed to see what was right in front of her. Blinded by hope, by gratitude, by her own desperate longing for a better life, she had allowed evil to slip past her defenses. As she sat trembling in the dark car, Alyssa's sobs filling the space between them, Monica realized there was no safe haven anymore. There was no going back. There was only one path forward now: expose the truth, no matter the cost, and save her daughter before it was too late. The drive home from the clinic was silent, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, thick with pain, confusion, and fear. Monica kept glancing at Alyssa curled into the passenger seat, her body small and fragile, as if trying to disappear into the worn fabric of the car seat. Monica's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her mind churned with 1,000 questions, but none of them had answers she was ready to face. Every so often, she caught Alyssa stealing a terrified glance at her, like a child waiting for punishment that would never come. When they pulled into the driveway of Daniel's house, the house that now felt like a prison, Monica hesitated. A part of her screamed to keep driving, to run, to never set foot inside those walls again, but reality, heavy and merciless, pinned her in place. She had no plan, no money saved, no one to turn to. They were trapped. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Daniel wasn't home yet. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching into an eternity. Monica helped Alyssa upstairs and tucked her into bed like she used to when Alyssa was little. She brushed a hand through her daughter's hair, feeling how it trembled under her fingers. "I'm sorry, baby," Monica whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see." Alyssa didn't respond. She simply turned her face to the wall and pulled the covers up to her chin, shutting the world out. Monica stood there for a long time, fighting back the sob that threatened to escape her chest. Then she quietly closed the door and made her way to her own room, collapsing onto the bed in a heap of exhaustion and despair. That night, Monica barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, flashes of memories assaulted her. Daniel's smiles, his words of comfort, the way he had inserted himself into every corner of their lives under the guise of protection. She replayed every moment where she had ignored her instincts, where she had told herself that everything was fine because she wanted it to be. In the darkness, guilt wrapped around her throat like a vice. How had she missed it? How had she let this happen under her own roof? The next morning, Daniel was back, moving through the house as if nothing had changed. His voice was calm, measured. He asked Monica if she needed anything, if Alyssa was feeling better. He even offered to pray with them. Monica stared at him, feeling a rage so deep it terrified her. How could he act so normal? How could he pretend that he hadn't destroyed their lives? She forced herself to smile tightly and decline the prayer, knowing she needed to keep the peace until she figured out her next move. She couldn't risk alerting him to her suspicions. Not yet. As the days passed, Monica played the part of the grateful, obedient partner, but inside she was unraveling. Alyssa remained distant, barely speaking, and when Daniel was around, she seemed to shrink into herself even more. Every glance, every small flinch, fueled Monica's resolve. Outside the house, the world went on as usual. Monica continued to work at the foundation, attending meetings, smiling at donors, pretending that her life hadn't shattered into a million pieces. But inside, she was gathering strength, preparing for the moment when she would finally break free. The emotional toll was staggering. Monica found herself crying in the car before walking into work. She snapped at co-workers over trivial mistakes. Her hands shook when she signed checks or answered emails. She barely ate. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Worse yet, the isolation was overwhelming. Monica couldn't confide in anyone. Daniel's influence stretched far beyond the walls of their home, into the church, into the community, into the very fabric of the life she had built. Who would believe her if she accused him? How could she explain the truth without evidence? Alyssa was her only concern now. Monica watched her daughter closely, noting every new shadow that crossed her face, every new tremor in her hands. The fear in Alyssa's eyes never fully faded. It was a constant presence, lingering like smoke in the air. Monica realized with brutal clarity that if she didn't act soon, she could lose Alyssa forever, not just to Daniel's manipulations, but to despair itself. Late one night, after another evening of forced normalcy, Monica found herself standing at the window, staring out at the darkened street. A storm was gathering, the clouds heavy and low, rumbling with distant thunder. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. A storm was coming for them too, and Monica would have to be ready. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass and made herself a promise. She would not let Daniel win. She would not let him continue to poison the life she had fought so hard to protect, even if it meant destroying everything they had built, even if it meant starting over from nothing. She would save Alyssa, no matter the cost. If this story is touching something deep inside you, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and your experiences could help others feel less alone. Together, we create a space where truth, healing, and strength have the power to grow. Monica Carter had always believed that truth revealed itself in small ways. Quiet moments, hushed conversations, fleeting glances. But she never imagined the truth that would shatter her world would be discovered in something so ordinary, so seemingly harmless as a forgotten cell phone. It happened late one afternoon when Daniel was in a rush to leave for a charity meeting. His phone, usually glued to his hand, sat buzzing quietly on the kitchen counter. Monica stared at it for a long moment, the buzzing drilling into her bones. Every instinct told her not to touch it. Every warning she had ever heard about violating privacy echoed in her mind. But instinct wasn't guiding her now. Desperation was. She snatched the phone up before she could lose her nerve. Her fingers trembled as she navigated past the password, a simple code she had watched Daniel input countless times. His late wife's birthday. Ironic, she thought bitterly, how easily trust could be weaponized. What she found made her blood run cold. Buried deep within the messaging app were conversations she was never meant to see, messages to Alyssa full of manipulative affection and chilling threats. "You're my special girl. You know how much I love you. If you tell anyone, everything your mother has will disappear. We're meant to be together. God understands." Monica's hands shook so violently that she almost dropped the phone. Her vision blurred with tears and rage. The monster she had let into their lives wasn't just a liar. He was a predator, grooming her daughter under her own roof while hiding behind scripture and sermons. She scrolled further, each message more horrifying than the last. Plans, meetings, warnings, detailed manipulation designed to trap Alyssa in silence and shame. Monica stumbled backward, clutching the phone to her chest as if it could somehow shield her from the reality she had uncovered. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the cold tile floor, her mind screaming. She had proof now, irrefutable, damning proof. But proof wasn't enough. Not yet. She needed a plan. She needed a way to expose Daniel without putting Alyssa in more danger. She needed to be smart, calculated. One wrong move, and Daniel's influence could bury them. He had powerful friends, people who trusted him, revered him. She couldn't risk losing Alyssa to that network of lies and power. That night, Monica lay awake, formulating her strategy. She would need allies, people outside Daniel's reach. She thought of Detective Mark Reynolds, an old acquaintance from her days working at the law firm. He was tough, skeptical by nature, and more importantly, he despised corruption. The next morning, while Daniel was away leading a youth retreat, Monica made her move. She took Alyssa to school under the pretense of a normal day, then drove straight to the precinct, the cell phone hidden in her purse like a loaded weapon. Detective Reynolds listened quietly as Monica poured out everything, the pregnancy, the fear, the messages. His face remained impassive, but his jaw tightened as he scrolled through the evidence. "You did the right thing coming here," he said finally, his voice low and serious. "But we have to be careful. Men like Brooks don't go down easily." Monica nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She didn't care how long it took. She didn't care how dangerous it was. She would burn her entire life to the ground if it meant saving Alyssa. Over the next few days, Reynolds and his team moved quietly. They set up surveillance, interviewed staff at the foundation, combed through financial records. The deeper they dug, the more rot they uncovered. Whispers of inappropriate behavior toward other girls, misuse of foundation funds, manipulation of community leaders. Daniel Brooks' carefully constructed empire of virtue was built on a foundation of lies, and now it was beginning to crack. Meanwhile, Monica played her part perfectly. She smiled at Daniel when he came home, prepared his meals, listened to his stories about charity work and faith. She made sure he suspected nothing, even as her hatred for him burned hotter with each passing day. Every second under his roof was torture. Every glance he threw at Alyssa made Monica's stomach churn, but she endured it all for the sake of the bigger goal, for justice, for freedom. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Daniel reached across to touch Monica's hand, offering a warm, practiced smile. "Everything's coming together, isn't it?" he said softly. "God's blessings are finally upon us." Monica forced a smile in return, feeling the weight of the secret burning inside her. "Yes," she lied. "Everything's coming together." But this time, it wasn't the way Daniel thought. The walls were closing in around him, and soon he would have nowhere left to hide. The shift in the air was almost imperceptible at first, a subtle undercurrent of change that only Monica Carter could feel. She carried the secret close to her heart as she moved through her days, a hidden fire that fueled her every step. The investigation into Daniel Brooks was underway, silent and strategic. Detective Mark Reynolds had assured her that discretion was critical. One slip could send Daniel running or worse, put Monica and Alyssa in even greater danger. Monica lived each day like she was walking a tightrope stretched over a pit of vipers. Every interaction with Daniel became a performance. She smiled when he smiled, laughed at his forced jokes, nodded along to his sermons about obedience and divine trust. All the while, rage coiled inside her, growing tighter with each passing day. Daniel, oblivious to the gathering storm, continued to move through life with the same self-assured arrogance. He hosted church events, met with city officials, and led prayers for the broken families he claimed to heal. Monica wanted to scream every time she watched him stand at the pulpit, spewing words of compassion and purity, while the truth festered beneath his polished surface. Behind the scenes, Reynolds worked methodically. Survivors started to come forward, quietly, fearfully. Young women who had once been part of Daniel's youth programs. They spoke of secret meetings, inappropriate comments, touches that lingered too long, promises made in hushed tones. Each testimony added weight to the case being built against him. The financial records were even worse. Reynolds' team uncovered misappropriated funds, Donor money funneled into private accounts, luxury expenses hidden beneath layers of false bookkeeping. The charitable empire Daniel had constructed was rotting from the inside out. Still, Monica knew that evidence alone wouldn't be enough. Daniel's reputation was ironclad among his followers. He had spent years cultivating loyalty, weaving himself into the very fabric of the community. People saw him as a savior, a symbol of hope. They wouldn't believe he was a predator unless confronted with undeniable proof. The key would be Alyssa. But Monica couldn't bring herself to force her daughter to relive the trauma. Not yet. Alyssa was fragile, a bird with broken wings. Monica's heart shattered every time she looked at her and saw the fear that never truly left her eyes. So Monica waited, letting the legal case grow stronger, wrapping Alyssa in as much protection and normalcy as she could muster. She knew that when the time came, Alyssa's voice would be the sword that cut through Daniel's lies. And that time was approaching fast. One evening, after Daniel had left for a late church meeting, Monica sat at the kitchen table with Alyssa. The house was quiet, heavy with unspoken things. Monica reached across the table and took her daughter's hand gently in hers. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," Monica said softly. "I'm working with people who can help us, people who will believe you." Alyssa's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't pull away. She simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the trust that still remained between them. Monica squeezed her hand, feeling a spark of hope she hadn't dared nurture in weeks. Meanwhile, Reynolds prepared the final steps. He had secured a search warrant for Daniel's house, including the hidden office that few people ever entered. Monica had mentioned it once in passing, an upstairs room Daniel kept locked, claiming it held sensitive church documents. The day of the raid, Monica's nerves were taut as piano wires. She kept Alyssa home from school under the pretense of illness, unwilling to leave her alone or risk any confrontation. They sat together on the living room couch as the minutes crawled by, the tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Then the knock came. Not Daniel. This time it was the police. Reynolds and his team moved quickly, securing the property and ushering Monica and Alyssa to safety. Monica clutched her daughter tightly as officers swept through the house, their heavy boots thudding against the polished hardwood floors. When they reached Daniel's private office, they broke down the door. Inside, they found what they needed: locked file cabinets filled with records, photos, private communications that painted a devastating portrait of manipulation and abuse. Daniel returned hours later to find his empire crumbling. The arrest was swift. Monica watched from the front porch as officers placed Daniel in handcuffs, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance, and Monica saw the flicker of fury behind his calm facade, the anger of a man who believed himself untouchable, now brought low. But she didn't flinch. She stood tall, holding Alyssa close, feeling the weight of fear lift from her chest for the first time in what felt like an eternity. As the squad car disappeared down the street, taking Daniel Brooks with it, Monica realized the hardest part was still ahead: healing, rebuilding, learning to trust again. But for the first time, they had a chance. A real chance. The day Daniel Brooks faced the court was overcast, the sky draped in a thick blanket of grey, as if the heavens themselves were mourning the betrayal that had been hidden for so long. Monica Carter sat rigid in the front row of the small courtroom, Alyssa beside her, their hands linked tightly together. It had taken months to get to this moment. Months of investigation, of whispered conversations, of gathering every possible shred of evidence. But finally, Daniel would have to answer for the lives he had destroyed. The courtroom buzzed with low, uneasy murmurs. Daniel's supporters filled half the benches, faces tight with confusion and anger. They couldn't reconcile the man who had preached salvation with the man now shackled and accused. Some of them glared at Monica as if she were the villain, as if exposing the truth was a greater crime than committing it. Monica met their gazes steadily, refusing to flinch. She had lived too long in fear. She would not cower now. When Daniel entered, he wore the same calm mask he always had, his hands cuffed in front of him, dressed in a standard orange jumpsuit. He moved with the slow dignity of a man still convinced of his own righteousness. But Monica saw something else, too, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. For the first time, Daniel Brooks was not in control. The prosecution wasted no time presenting their case. Testimonies from survivors, financial records proving the embezzlement, expert analysis of the text messages Monica had found. And then the final devastating piece, Alyssa's testimony. Monica had agonized over whether to allow Alyssa to speak. She had left the decision entirely up to her daughter, knowing how painful it would be. And in the end, Alyssa had chosen to stand up, not just for herself, but for every girl who had been silenced. When Alyssa took the stand, the room fell into an almost sacred silence. She was small in the oversized chair, her voice barely above a whisper at first. But as she spoke, recounting the manipulation, the fear, the isolation, her voice grew steadier. She told them about the threats, the promises, the way Daniel had twisted her world until she didn't know who to trust. Monica's heart ached with pride and sorrow in equal measure. Her daughter, battered but unbroken, was reclaiming her voice. Daniel's defense team tried to dismantle her, to poke holes in her story. But Alyssa didn't falter. Not once. The prosecutor presented the text messages, reading them aloud for the entire court to hear. The chilling words Daniel had written sounded even more damning when stripped of the false charm he wielded in public. When it was over, the defense offered little in rebuttal. There was no explaining away the evidence. No sermon could save him now. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, announced the verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, half in stunned outrage, half in relieved vindication. Monica held Alyssa tightly, tears streaming down her face, not tears of sadness, but of release, of long-awaited justice. Daniel stood motionless as the sentence was read. Decades in prison without the possibility of parole. His mask cracked then. The righteous facade crumbled, leaving only a bitter, aging man stripped of power. As he was led away, Daniel turned his head, locking eyes with Monica one last time. She met his gaze unflinchingly. There was no fear left in her, only contempt and something else, pity. Because even now, Daniel didn't understand. He thought he had been untouchable. He thought his words could erase truth, that his status could bury his sins. But he had underestimated the strength of those he tried to break. Outside the courthouse, the storm that had threatened all day finally broke. Rain poured from the sky, drenching the crowd that had gathered. Monica and Alyssa stood beneath a shared umbrella, the cold water running in rivers around their feet. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but Monica ignored them all. None of it mattered. All that mattered was that they were free. Free from the house that had become a prison. Free from the man who had nearly destroyed them. Free to rebuild their lives on their own terms. As they walked toward their car, Monica felt Alyssa slip her hand into hers. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. They had survived, they had endured. The road ahead would not be easy. Healing was not a destination, but a journey, and there would be days when the weight of what they had lived through would feel unbearable, but they would face it together. For the first time in what felt like forever, Monica allowed herself to dream again. Not of grand houses or powerful allies, but of simple things, of peace, of laughter, of a future where Alyssa could be a child again, free from the shadows of the past. The storm raged on around them, but Monica didn't feel afraid. She knew now that she had the strength to weather any storm. Because love, real love, fierce and protective and unyielding, was stronger than any monster hiding behind a pulpit. And no matter what came next, Monica Carter and her daughter would face it head-on, together. The news of Daniel Brooks' conviction spread like wildfire through the community. By the next morning, the story dominated the local headlines. Beloved pastor found guilty of abuse and fraud. Faith shattered. Reverend's double life exposed. Monica Carter sat at the kitchen table, the newspaper spread open before her, feeling a strange sense of surreal detachment. The man who had once been a pillar of the community was now a symbol of betrayal and disgrace. Reactions across the city were polarized. Some members of Daniel's congregation refused to believe the verdict. They gathered outside the courthouse with handmade signs reading, "Free our pastor," and "False accusations will not prevail," chanting and praying for his release. Others, once blinded by Daniel's charm, now recoiled in horror, questioning how they could have been so easily deceived. Local talk shows buzzed with debates, dissecting every aspect of the case. Trust, once given freely, was now a rare and fragile commodity. For Monica and Alyssa, life was a strange blend of relief and isolation. There were those who praised Monica's bravery, who left cards and flowers on their porch, thanking her for exposing the truth. But there were just as many who crossed the street to avoid them, their faces a mix of pity and suspicion. Monica understood. She didn't need their approval. Her only concern was Alyssa's healing. At the foundation where Monica had once worked alongside Daniel, chaos reigned. Board members scrambled to distance themselves, claiming ignorance of Daniel's actions. Donations plummeted. Programs collapsed. Within weeks, the once thriving charity folded entirely, leaving dozens of employees out of work and hundreds of families without the services they had relied on. It hurt Monica to see something that had meant so much to so many crumble. But she knew deep down that the foundation had been built on a lie. It needed to fall so that something better, something real, could eventually rise in its place. The church, too, fractured. Some elders resigned in disgrace. Attendance plummeted. Sunday services, once packed with hundreds of worshippers, dwindled to a few dozen somber faces. The building itself, once a beacon of hope, now stood as a silent reminder of misplaced faith. Detective Mark Reynolds became something of an unsung hero in the aftermath. Though he shied away from the media attention, his role in bringing Daniel to justice didn't go unnoticed. Other survivors, emboldened by Monica and Alyssa's courage, stepped forward in unrelated cases across the city, shedding light on abuses that had long been buried under layers of fear and shame. Alyssa, meanwhile, struggled to find her footing in this new reality. She returned to school cautiously, wary of the stares and whispers that inevitably followed her. Some students were kind, offering words of support. Others were cruel, their ignorance manifesting in cruel jokes and ostracism. Monica did everything she could to shield Alyssa, to create a home that felt safe again. Therapy sessions became part of their routine. They adopted a dog from a local shelter, a timid, scarred creature named Luna, who, like them, was learning how to trust again. Monica, too, grappled with her own scars. She had spent so long living under Daniel's shadow that reclaiming her independence felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Simple acts, going to the grocery store, answering the phone, opening the mail, carried echoes of anxiety. Every knock at the door made her heart leap into her throat. But with time, the fear dulled. Not disappeared, never completely, but dulled enough that she could breathe again. In a small, powerful gesture of reclaiming their narrative, Monica and Alyssa began volunteering at a local women's shelter. They shared their story when asked, not for sympathy, but to offer hope. To show others that survival was possible, that healing was messy, but real. Slowly, Monica found herself reconnecting with old friends she had lost along the way, building new relationships based on honesty rather than appearances. She realized how many people had been waiting for her to reach out, to let them in. One evening, as she and Alyssa sat on the porch watching Luna chase fireflies in the yard, Monica allowed herself to smile. A real, unforced smile that reached her eyes. "We're getting there," Alyssa said quietly, almost as if afraid to jinx it. Monica squeezed her daughter's hand. "Yeah, we are." There were still hard days, anniversaries, court appeals, random triggers that sent Alyssa spiraling into old fears. But there were good days too, days filled with laughter, with hope, with small victories that felt monumental. As for Daniel Brooks, his name quickly became a cautionary tale. Articles about his downfall were archived, gathering dust. New scandals replaced old ones in the endless churn of media attention. He was no longer the center of anyone's world. And that, Monica thought, was the ultimate justice, not just his imprisonment, but his irrelevance. He had thrived on power, on control, on being revered. To be forgotten was a fate far worse than any prison cell. In time, a new pastor took over the church, someone younger, transparent, determined to rebuild trust brick by brick. Monica and Alyssa never returned. Their faith, while bruised, was not broken, but their healing required different soil to grow. Sometimes Monica would still wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, expecting to hear Daniel's voice in the darkness. But then she would remember. He was gone, powerless, no longer a threat. And with every dawn that followed, Monica and Alyssa took another step forward, leaving the shadows behind, walking steadily toward the light. The story of Monica Carter and her daughter Alyssa left a scar on their community, but it also sparked a long overdue reckoning. In a world where appearances often hide dark realities, their journey served as a brutal reminder that evil doesn't always wear an obvious mask. Sometimes it speaks in soft tones, offers helping hands, and stands behind pulpits. The lessons that emerged from their ordeal were harsh but necessary. Trust is sacred and fragile. It must be earned and guarded, not given blindly based on reputation or charisma. Monica had learned this truth the hard way, through heartbreak and betrayal, but she refused to let it define her future. One of the most powerful realizations was that silence is the greatest ally of injustice. For too long, Monica had ignored her instincts, rationalized her fears, and silenced her doubts in the name of gratitude and hope. Daniel Brooks thrived because good people, well-intentioned people, gave him the benefit of the doubt. They mistook his position for character, his sermons for evidence of goodness. But monsters don't announce themselves. They blend in, they manipulate, and they rely on the silence of those around them to continue their harm. Monica learned that protecting those you love sometimes means standing alone, facing a wall of disbelief and judgment. It means enduring whispers, cruel rumors, and the loneliness of knowing that doing the right thing often costs more than anyone tells you. Yet the cost of silence, she realized, is even greater. Speaking out shattered Monica's world, but it also set her and Alyssa free. It allowed truth to pierce the carefully constructed illusions that had imprisoned them. It gave others the courage to step forward, to shed their own chains of fear and shame. Their story became a testament to resilience, not the absence of pain or fear, but the decision to keep fighting despite them. Healing, Monica understood, is not linear. It's messy, painful, and slow. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's learning to trust again, even when every instinct tells you to shut the world out. But it is possible. Their journey also highlighted the importance of vigilance within communities. Blind devotion to leaders, no matter how charming or respected they seem, creates fertile ground for abuse. True faith, whether in religion, in people, or in institutions, requires scrutiny, accountability, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Monica knew they would never forget what happened. The scars were permanent, but scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of survival. And survival, in the face of betrayal, manipulation, and overwhelming odds, is itself a form of victory. For Monica and Alyssa, the future remained uncertain. But it was a future they had reclaimed with their own hands, no longer dictated by fear or deception. And that, Monica thought as she watched her daughter sketching again under a warm afternoon sun, was the truest form of justice she could have ever hoped for. In the months following Daniel Brooks's conviction, life for Monica and Alyssa began to take a different shape. Freedom was not a sudden transformation. It was a slow, sometimes painful rebirth. Each day brought new challenges, but also small, precious victories that hinted at the life they were determined to rebuild. Monica moved them out of the city, away from the shadows of their old life. They settled in a quiet town several hours away, a place where no one whispered behind their backs or stared with thinly veiled pity. Here, they could start fresh, free from the constant reminders of the nightmare they had survived. Monica found work at a small non-profit dedicated to supporting survivors of abuse. It was demanding, emotionally heavy work, but it gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Every woman she helped, every young person she listened to, felt like another brick laid in the foundation of her healing. Alyssa, too, found her way forward. Slowly at first, with cautious steps, but steadily. She returned to her passion for art, enrolling in classes at a local community college. Her drawings evolved from dark, anguished images to pieces filled with light, hope, and resilience. She spoke little of the past, but Monica could see the strength blossoming in her daughter's eyes. Occasionally, echoes of their former life would surface. A news report about another fallen leader, a flash of orange jumpsuits on TV, an overheard conversation about trust and betrayal. In those moments, Monica would feel the old fear creep up, cold and familiar, but she had learned to face it head-on, to acknowledge it without letting it consume her. Daniel Brooks, meanwhile, faded from public memory. His name, once spoken with reverence, became a cautionary tale, an example of how power can corrupt and how blind faith can be dangerous. In prison, he lost his influence, his adoring followers, his carefully crafted image. He became just another inmate, another man brought low by his own arrogance and cruelty. The church he once led struggled to recover. Under new leadership, it shifted its mission, focusing on transparency, healing, and rebuilding the shattered trust of its congregation. It was a long, painful process, but for those who remained, it was a chance to create something more honest and compassionate. Monica and Alyssa, however, chose a different path. Their faith was now deeply personal, unbound by institutions or leaders. It lived quietly in their acts of kindness, in their resilience, and in the unbreakable bond they shared. They were no longer victims, they were survivors. And survival was not just about escaping the past. It was about choosing every day to build something better, something stronger. Monica knew that the wounds would never fully disappear. Some scars are meant to stay, reminders of battles fought and won. But she also knew that scars did not define them. What defined them was their courage, their refusal to remain silent, their decision to rise. What do you believe justice really means? Is it simply locking away the guilty, or is it giving survivors the power to reclaim their lives and their voices? Monica and Alyssa's story teaches us that evil often hides in plain sight, behind trusted faces and powerful titles. It reminds us that silence can be just as deadly as violence, and that breaking that silence, though terrifying, is the first and most vital step toward healing and change. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think true justice was served in this case? Do you believe communities are doing enough to protect the vulnerable, or is there still too much blind trust given to those in positions of power? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, your voice matters, and if this story moved you, if it made you think, made you feel, made you question, please consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be struggling to find their voice, someone who needs to know they're not alone. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you real stories that reveal the hidden truths behind the headlines. Stories of resilience, survival, and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. Because the more we listen, the more we speak out, and the more we stand together, the less room there is for monsters to hide. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Stay strong, stay aware, and never stop seeking the truth.